We're joined here today with Dr. Alexandra Sowa, internal medicine specialist with expertise in obesity medicine. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This is such an important area and can be so confusing for women in menopause, particularly when you start in that perimenopause phase when everything feels like a roller coaster and you have the weight gain potentially, or share with us what happens to our muscle mass, our metabolism, our blood glucose regulation as we start into this period of time.
So there's a triple whammy. It's one, aging. So even before estrogen levels decline, we age and muscle mass starts to decrease. And that has an impact across all of the things you mentioned: metabolism, weight gain, blood sugar. So that's first happening. And then you start to have hormone imbalance. So specifically, as estrogen levels decline and our balance changes, that leads to things like insulin resistance, which make weight gain almost inevitable. And what happens is we start to deprioritize our muscle mass, our body does, with this hormonal switch, and we start shifting where we're carrying our weight. So we go from kind of carrying it on our arms and our legs, and then you start putting it centrally, right? That dreaded abdominal belly fat. And that is a mechanism of declining estrogen. And this then drives insulin resistance further. And so a lot of women come to me and they say, I am doing everything right.
Mm-hmm.
No one believes me. I'm doing it better than I did it 5 years ago. And I am still gaining weight. And I just nod my head and I say, I believe you, because this is what can happen. And unfortunately for women, just like so many things in life, they're like, well, just deal with it. It's clearly you. Like, try harder, do better. But no, really, it is. Weight gain in midlife is generally hormones in chaos, whether that is estrogen declining, our balance between progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone changing, and insulin resistance, and all of the other hormones that go into fat regulation just kind of going nuts.
Anywhere.
Yes. So that's really what's happening. And traditionally, we've said, oh, it's not. I mean, even in my field of obesity medicine, some of the academic experts will say, it's not menopause, it's just natural aging. Well, okay, they're one and the same. And yes, it is. We know that this is happening. And just because men also do gain weight as they age too, because of this decrease in muscle mass and metabolism shifts, it is much more significant for women. On average, people gain like 1.5 pounds a year over the course of 15 years. That can translate into 20 to even 30 pounds. But for many more women, it's faster and it's more significant. And so the great news is, though, we have solutions now to help people, one, dig deeper to understand what's going on, and then to help with treatment.
Yeah. Well, and that 1.5 a year, when when I'm speaking at places and I say that, I sort of second guess myself because it's a lot. Pound and a half a year is a lot of weight.
It is a lot, but a lot of women are like, well, pound and a half. Yeah. I gained 15 last year, right? And so I often think we're underestimating it. Yeah. And it's really hard on a population level to understand what exactly is happening with weight. But we do know that gain happens, and we know the shift of where we carry our weight happens. And so it's not in your head. It's not your fault. And there is a biology, a natural biology that carries us through life. And as we go through this transition, this midlife transition, unfortunately, weight gain can be a part of it, and it can really make the whole thing feel 10 times worse.
Well, and that panic, when it comes on, to your point, when it comes on quickly and you haven't changed what you're doing, it's like then you start probably chasing the fast things, right? So I'm not going to eat what I normally eat. I'm going to cut back my calories. I'm going to exercise more. And those things are not going to help. In fact, they might make it worse, no?
100%. So a lot of times when people say, oh, I'm doing everything right, they're even doing it to the extreme. And, those things that worked when you were in your 20s, like, I'm just going to eat really clean this week. I don't even know what that means, but it's kind of like, I'm going to be really good, right? I'm going to be really good, no alcohol. And then I'm going to go to the gym 3 times, or I'm going to think about going to the gym 3 times, and you could take off 5 pounds.
Exactly.
It just doesn't work. And it chips away at our reserve. And so I'm always telling people that weight loss is not about willpower, and you can't just will yourself to do it. And just thinking about it or saying tomorrow is the day I recommit, or I'm going to figure this out, this must be me, it really starts to just really chip away at our soul, I feel. And that's the thing. It's like this used to work for me and now it's not. So I'm sweating, I'm on the bike, I'm not eating, I'm fasting. Someone said I fast for 24 hours. Someone said give up Diet Coke. Someone said give up coffee. I'm doing this, I'm taking this supplement, and none of it's working. And you just feel like a mess.
Mm-hmm. So if we want to approach this in a balanced, healthy way, what are some of the solutions out there to help women in this stage?
So I think the first thing we need to do is understand our labs. And this is overlooked in so many doctors' offices. We can treat menopause symptoms based on symptoms alone. But when it comes to weight management, I really need to see some of your metabolic health markers. Mm-hmm. So I want you going to your doctor and I want you getting a fasting glucose, a fasting insulin. This is controversial because a lot of doctors are like, fasting insulin, I never learned about that. That seems silly. Nope, it's very, very helpful. And I'll tell you in a second. I want you getting standard lipid panel. And if you have any heart health history in your family, I want it even being more expanded. And so we're not just looking at traditional LDL and HDL and triglycerides, right, but we can start there. And then I like to look at things just to make sure nothing else hormonally has gone wrong with your thyroid. And I want to look at some basic vitamin D labs, B12, ferritin, which is an iron store if you're feeling tired. That can give me good insight into what is going on. We've been talking about hormones are kind of the thing that goes into chaos. Weight gain is neurohormonal dysregulation. So the way that your body kept a fat balance and an energy balance and a hunger balance, it can just shift really overnight, where your brain is not responding to the same level of hormone signals that it did in your 30s or 20s. Now, that neurohormonal dysregulation can set in as early as childhood for some. And this is why we have a worsening obesity epidemic. But for many, it starts around midlife. And so we can't test all of the hormones that are involved in the hunger fat storage pathway, but one of them that we can test is insulin. Okay. And insulin is created by your pancreas, and insulin is a fat storage and a hunger hormone. It's a necessary hormone. Why? Because it grabs glucose and it carries it off to all of the organs in our body for use. What happens over time, especially as we start to lose muscle, especially as we've kind of hammered that the hormones too much with blood sugar, with elevated sugar, is that we can develop something called insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is where your pancreas is making insulin, but honestly, it's making too much. And the actual signal is not being received that well by the body. So the body is saying, I don't want to receive the blood sugar at this level. Can you make more insulin, please? And so then there's a period of time where your blood sugar is creeping up. And that causes a ton of inflammation, and that leads to weight gain. But then also the higher levels of insulin that are needed. Remember I said insulin is a fat storage and a hunger hormone. So you get into this terrible chicken and egg cycle where you need more insulin. And so that's insulin resistance. And so I like to test for that because that gives us so much information.
So much information. Yeah.
And it validates for people, this isn't just me. There's something going on.
Yeah. It's almost like your teenager's playing the drums in your house and you're just able to tune it out now, right? So like, it's like your body's just not responding to it. It's ignoring it. Yeah. So you can keep making more, but it's not going to really respond to it the same way it did before.
Exactly. And so that's exactly what happens with all these other hormones that go into fat and energy metabolism balance. It's the same thing. It's like your body needs more of them or less of them, or it's not receiving the signal anymore. So it really does come all the way down to hormones when it comes to weight gain. So I like to check all of the labs we talked about because I also want people to just know where their metabolic health is. So I want you looking at your triglycerides. That's often overlooked too. Triglycerides are a reflection of excess carbohydrates and kind of free fat floating around. And it's a predictive marker of poor health down the road. And it's something that honestly in traditional medical school, like we're kind of like, triglycerides, they're high.
Right.
Oh, like it's not that bad LDL cholesterol that everyone's concerned about. So taking a peek at that, kind of screening yourself for metabolic dysfunction is good. I like for people to know that, because then I know where we're starting. And then if I help you with a medication like a GLP-1, or we'll talk about all the tools in our toolkit. But if we go on a specific way of eating, and if we use a medication and we start hormonal therapy, I want to know how far we've come.
Right.
And so treating symptoms is great, but knowing the why of it is very important to me.
100%. So can we tell then from that, is it lifestyle? Is it hormone? Is there a way to decipher like what is the driver of the weight gain, or is it just sort of a mosaic of contributing factors?
It's a mosaic of contributing factors. That's a really good way of putting it. So weight gain is multifactorial. So it is I like to lead with hormones because we can understand that. But it is some element of lifestyle, and it is some element of what we consume, and it is some element of where we live, right? 50 years ago, obesity still was here and around, but we only had about 10% of the population with genetic obesity, where your genes were kind of like, hey, you're a hardier constitution of a person, you carry more weight. As we've gone through the past 50 years, our whole world has changed. And really, it does come a lot down to the packaged foods and the convenience of our lives. So around us, our food comes in plastic. We have busy lives, and we eat a lot more processed foods and foods that are kind of the nutrition has been taken out. And that is what it is. And I cannot ask the individual to solve that problem. As a society, we need to solve that problem.
Right.
But that's been one element of it. Our environmental factors, the pollution in the air, where we live, like we just aren't walkers anymore or bikers. And a lot of us are in our cars. Our environmental regulation. This sounds silly, but I love it as an example. We're too comfortable. We don't shiver. We don't sweat. We sit in air conditioned. We're here talking today on a computer on Zoom. And so there's so much that's contributed to the significant rise in global obesity. On an individual level, you have genes. You're handed those genes.
Right.
There is something called epigenetic modification that's happened over the past 2 generations, where the way your genes express themselves has changed. So traditionally, maybe your genes didn't fall into that 10% of obesity, but now something's been turned on because of potentially the processed foods that were fed to you in the 90s. Like I think about all of like the low calorie, high processed foods.
I think about the damage done in that fat-free period and the I just think of it sometimes like what was ingested by this generation.
Totally. And then it's kind of, things way back to you had no control over, whether your mother had a C-section or a vaginal, or she breastfed you or bottle fed you, or kind of what food was fed in your school cafeteria. All of those things viruses can influence your epigenetics. So we start with genes and then how they express themselves. And then, yes. So traditionally, people have come to me and said, oh, you're an obesity med doctor. Like, isn't that just for people who just like don't care and like are slobs and like eat whatever they want and like don't exercise? No, we know that. But there is some element of how you live your life and the way you prioritize that can positively impact your weight. It can also negatively impact your weight. And we do know that people who prioritize strength training younger, who prioritize healthy food without restriction. So, women who come to me with periods of yo-yo dieting have some of the hardest to correct metabolisms. Yeah. And they trying harder than anyone else, but unfortunately the constant restriction and regain has been poor. There's poor metabolic adaptation there, because every time we lose weight and regain, unfortunately, we lose muscle in the process of loss. And then when we regain, we're regaining mostly fat. And so that sets us up for a harder time of weight loss.
Well, and isn't there a memory for that in the brain where it's like, okay, you're doing this again. So it holds on to the weight or the fat.
Yeah. This is a complicated conversation in my field, but this idea of a metabolic set point, but really your body does for reasons of protection want to stay at its higher weight. And so what we can do as society and what I do as a mom of 4 kids is like, let's have the healthiest relationship with food that we
Mhm.
possibly can from the get-go. Unfortunately, for many of us, who are in our 40s, 50s and beyond, it's like, well, okay, that's nice, but I can't go back to the start now. We can reset
Right,
for the next generation, but what do
right,
I do now? And
right.
so, and that's where all of these amazing tools of medications are just so helpful at recorrecting the neurohormonal dysregulation of it all.
So just before we kind of go through, down those treatments that are present now, from a prevention perspective, if you are in your 30s, 40s, um, I would say from what I'm hearing from you, like building up that muscle mass, eating a very healthy, high protein, good fats, good carb diet, managing the stress, moving as much as you can. You're, would you say those are sort of the things that you could do preventatively to mitigate
Yes.
or make yourself in the best position as you enter this period?
Yes, I'd say 100% the most important thing you can do is build your muscle. It really does set us up for a strong metabolic state as we age. And then again, the healthy foods, diverse foods, um, protein. I love protein. I'm part of the protein forward problem. I've been talking about it for years, but we
Yeah,
have to remember fiber is incredibly important too.
yeah,
And we want to have a variety of foods in our diet. Um, when I say plant-based, what I mean is like make sure there's plants on your plate, right?
yeah.
And protein first, but plant-based. Um, and a diversity of movement also. So I think for a long time we equated no pain, no gain at the gym. And so if you weren't sweating it out and killing yourself, it didn't mean anything. So then people just
Yeah,
didn't do it. But I want you to go for a hike. I
yeah.
want you to
Just
go for a
move.
walk, just
Yeah,
move your body. I also think getting outside and staying present with both the real world and then real people is something very, very important
hmm,
because what does it matter if we have the best physical body, but we don't have a strong mind? And being connected to nature, being connected to other humans, we know how important that is. And I do deeply believe that that is a part of long term metabolic health, is really just connection and happiness. That it can seem a little silly and trite, but it is important. And I do think a lot of that has been taken from us post COVID, where so much of our world is just, well, we're connecting, we're talking, but we're not together.
no, yeah, 100%. Yeah, agreed, agree. And so shifting into treatments now, hormone therapy, there's not a lot of evidence that taking hormone therapy is going to help you lose weight. I do suspect there's a bit of a timing hypothesis here, similar to heart disease, where if you take it early, that 10 years within the postmenopause period, that perhaps there's a bit of a protective effect just logically because you're maintaining your muscle mass, etc.
Right.
What are your thoughts around, or share with me how debunk my perspective on how hormone therapy could play a role in weight?
I agree with you. It makes a lot of sense. If we were to start earlier, potentially there's a bigger impact long term on weight. But we've never quite been able to see that treatment leads to weight loss. And I would not, I have had patients come to me who are put on hormone therapy potentially a little early because of weight gain, but that's not how that should be used. If we have no other symptoms other than weight gain, let's look for the other drivers of weight gain. Um, what we do know is that, so let's talk about GLP-1s because they
Yeah.
go hand in hand very nicely
Okay.
with hormone management in midlife and menopause. So GLP-1 medications they mimic a hormone that occurs naturally in the body. It is just on the thousands of orders stronger and doesn't degrade quickly. So people don't realize that. But this is like if I were to give you Synthroid for hypothyroidism, it mimics a hormone that's in your body. Same thing with a GLP-1 medication. And how does it work? GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, Mounjaro, they have 3 superpowers, as I say. And I write about this in my book, The Ozempic Revolution, because it's really important for people to understand why these drugs have such an important place today. So they talk to the brain and they tell the brain, you don't have to be so hungry all the time. I'm going to help adjust the hormones that are telling you to eat all the time, to think about food all the time, to obsess over this. Just calm. And so when people say we have reduced food noise, that's the effect there. And there are a lot of other positive effects on the brain beyond that. But the second one, when it comes to weight reduction, is it works on the level of the stomach and the GI tract. And it says, hey, we're going to slow this down. We're going to make sure that you understand that you've just taken in nutrients and calories, and we're going to slow it down so that we talk to the hormones that are connected to the stomach and then go out from there and then ultimately go back to the brain and say, hey, we're full. We do not need to eat. And then finally, potentially the most impactful way that it works for weight management is on the level of the pancreas. We talked about insulin resistance. Insulin resistance rears its head for many in midlife, can present a lot earlier. It makes the pancreas immediately secrete insulin in a powerful way that grabs up that glucose. So blood sugar is immediately lowered, inflammation is lowered, and things start running again the way that they should. And that really helps with fat storage reduction. Now, we have GLP-1 receptors all over our body. This is just like estrogen. We have estrogen receptors all over our body. Same thing with GLP-1s. Eyes, kidneys, heart, skin, brain, everywhere. So this is where we start to see the effect beyond the scale. We start to see all of these cardioprotective effects, renal protective effects. Potentially, we are starting to see in general population dementia reduction because of decreased inflammation. We know that there is improvement in inflammatory bowel disorders, psoriasis, autoimmune disease. We're starting to kind of see this effect. Why? Because you have receptors all over the body, and there can be a positive impact. Right. When it comes to GLP-1 medications, they can be very successful at helping people to lose weight. What's very interesting is that we've recently have a few published retrospective studies that show that women who are on menopause hormone therapy and GLP-1s lose about 30% more than matched patients who are just on GLP-1 therapy alone. So while we may not see weight loss from estrogen progesterone treatment, we are seeing potentially more weight loss, better response to GLP-1 hormones when we're not just giving the GLP-1 hormone, but we're replacing all of the hormones we need. And it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to assume that testosterone wasn't part of that study, but that's really fascinating. And so before I go to microdosing, because this whole area is growing and hearing more about it, what would we say to, so just knowing how women are, if they're not having a weight issue, they're thinking, oh, I need to be on GLP too. I want those benefits. What would we say to those women? I know it's a complicated question, but is there benefits for everybody to be on GLP?
At this point in time, we just don't know yet.
We don't know.
And I want women to be careful about this because 2 years ago, so I've been doing this for a long time. I've exclusively been practicing in this field using GLP-1 medications for well over 10 years.
Yeah.
Just a few years ago, I really almost had to talk patients into this. It was never like my way or the highway, but it was like, I really think this could help you. We really have a tool. And the rest of the internet was like, just eat less, work out harder. These are gross. And now everybody is on the GLP-1 bandwagon, every single person. But I worry about that because in that pendulum swing, why were they once selling you one thing and now they're selling you something else? Yeah. And I think even though these drugs are so powerful, they are ripe for abuse. And I deeply believe in the benefit of these medications, but I am not convinced that everyone should be on them. And I worry that it could, even if women are like, oh, I don't need to lose weight, I just want for the other benefits, they might subconsciously lean into the even thinner aspect, and that can be detrimental.
Right.
We have only studied these drugs for very specific purposes, and it's really hard to extrapolate just based on an N of 1 if the benefit for all of these other things is linked to the drug, or if it's really just linked to, we helped you lose 20% of your total body weight, and we know all of these other diseases are made worse by
Of
obesity.
course.
So we got you closer to the normal weight. So I don't know. I'm just not sure. Give me about 5 more years and science to start studying the population of smaller dosing for preventive disease. We just don't have any data on that yet.
Yeah, and I was speaking to another physician, and that was her hypothesis was more leaning more towards, well, you've lost the 20 pounds, so then of course it's going to have impacts on other areas versus it being necessarily GLP-1. But to your point, it's new research and typical to us falling into the marketing trap. And I mean, you see it with the protein, right? Protein everything. And so we start to lose our own brain to say, yes, I do need to boost my protein, but the protein chips are not going to replace a beautiful salad with eggs and
Right.
Avocado and those types of things. So we're definitely falling into that with GLP-1. How can we understand this whole microdosing conversation? Is it just a trendy term to say like we're titrating your dosage, or what is this microdosing?
So it's this concept of using a smaller than approved FDA dose for your needs. If you need to lose weight, you need the FDA approved dose. 9 out of 10 people. There are some people, for very particular reasons, I'll start on a smaller dose. Usually
Yeah.
that has to do with history of extreme side effects. So, for example, women who had hyperemesis gravidum, the nausea that came with pregnancy, they are so traumatized by by nausea
Mm.
that there's a lot of fear around starting a drug like a GLP-1. And so we'll start at a very small dose, very small, just so that it's comfortable for them. But they'll still likely need a higher dose if they have the weight to lose that these drugs are indicated for. Where I'm seeing this term, it's coined on the internet, and it's coined by people who are like, years ago, I was selling you weight loss through exercise. And now I'm going to sell you weight loss or health through microdosing. And we're going to come up with smaller than normal doses that aren't studied or aren't approved. I don't really have a judgment on whether it can be effective yet. We just have to wait. And I really do worry that it kind of is trendy. My other concern is that if you're going to be on the med, I want it to work for you. So let's use the doses that were studied. We studied microdosing in clinical trials. It just didn't have the end effect for blood sugar management or for weight loss. And so that's why these doses have been set. I don't think everyone needs to rush up to the full dose of these meds. I like to keep people at lower doses. If it's working, fantastic. Technically, is that microdosing? Yes, because the FDA says with Wegovy, you should go all the way up to 2.4 milligrams. I have lots of people who just stay on the middle doses or the starting doses. That's fine, in my opinion. When people use the term microdosing too, I really worry that it's like a mask for shame. Like,
Right.
you need
I'm
the
just
full dose.
microdosing. Right.
And I just need exactly. And so just watch out for that. Make sure that you don't feel that internal like sting when you hear that word. It's not you. Like the dose of the medication does not have a value on your ability to lose weight. Some people just need higher doses. I say this all the time. Just like with treating hypothyroidism, no one's going around being like, oh, my doctor had to go up on my Synthroid. That must mean I'm a bad person. People do feel that way about weight loss drugs because inherently in the topic and treatment of weight loss, people feel such inherent shame and bias. And so that's another reason I'm like, this microdosing term. Can we find another word for it?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting perspective. The stereotypes around obesity being you're lazy, you overeat, and learning now, I think it's just an exciting time for this demographic as we're learning more, that they actually have their brain telling them they're hungry all the time and the power of these medications to help with that. What a shift for people to have some more empathy and understanding for these people.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've come a long way. We still have a lot longer to
Yeah,
go.
so far to go.
We have so much to go. But at least for the individual, when I get that one patient or the one person who read my book and is like, I really thought it was
Thank you.
me. I really thought it was
Yeah,
me for so long.
yeah.
And just like the fact that I can release myself from this and that it was my body working against me and now things are operating as they should. That's such a beautiful thing. But unfortunately, within our own minds, within our society, and within doctors' offices, there's still
Yeah.
a lot of
A lot
bias.
of work to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the long-term strategy for weight loss? It's the rates of gaining back the weight and a lot of the research, they're very high. Do we have any research with these Ozempic GLP-1 drugs about long-term weight loss and do we titrate off of them? Is this a lifetime thing? What do we know about the long-term weight loss area?
Because we are replacing a hormone that has gone kind of rogue in the body, generally, this is a long term management, just like with estrogen therapy,
Hmm.
just with hormones, just like if I were to give you Synthroid for your thyroid.
Hmm.
Generally, once we start one of these hormones and you respond well, your body will need it. Now, there are a few, and that's what all of the evidence shows. 95% of people will regain all of their weight. Really, I mean, that's what it shows. It shows about 75%, but that's only because we studied them out to like 18 months, 2 years. But ultimately, weight gain will be there. And we know that historically from weight loss studies. You take away the thing that got you there, and then it'll come back. Um,
Yeah.
but that's not the case for all women. So I take a very detailed, thorough history when I meet with a patient that goes all the way back to childhood. If you tell me that in childhood you identified as chubby and that
Mm.
continued through teenagehood and then into adulthood, you're going to we have a discussion right off the bat that likely, even if I help you lose 150 pounds, we are going to have to probably stay on this medication because this has been part of this genetic, epigenetic manifestation your whole life. If you're a woman who put on significant amount of weight through IVF and post pregnancy and just really couldn't take it off, or there was a medication or a treatment, something else in your life. I take care of a lot of patients who go on tamoxifen after breast cancer. That can be weight gain inducing. But then after they go off of the medication, if we help them take off the weight, we might be able to get them back more to their baseline. So if there was like a trigger or a one-time event for weight management, you're a better candidate for coming off and down off these medications. If your struggle has been lifelong, likely we'll have to stay on them. While we've had these medications and studied them for over 20 years, we are in the early stages of studying what does it look like as we come down and what should the strategy be. And what we can try to do is some people will say, do not touch this dose of the drug. I love it so much. Don't take it away. And I'm like,
Right.
great.
Yeah.
And that's appropriate. But if
Yeah.
you really want to try to come down, well, then we slowly come down. We watch the scale like a hawk. I
Yeah.
tell you over and over again that if you're not a failure, if you can't do this without the medication, just because I don't want people, beating themselves up about it.
Right.
But if we can slowly titrate down, that's amazing. And I love to bring people down to the lowest possible dose on these drugs. Sometimes also what we'll do is we'll come down on the dose of the drugs and then we'll swap something else in. So GLP-1 medications are not the only tools we have. We have old school tools like metformin that help with blood sugar management and with body composition. We have other weight management tools like Contrave or Qsymia, phentermine as an appetite stimulant that you can layer in. It's not as holistic as a GLP-1 in terms of like reaching all the receptors in the body, but it can definitely help us with a balance. That can help with cost. Lower doses cost less.
Yeah.
And it can help us just with side effect management too. And it just makes people sometimes feel better. Like, I feel good. I'm on a lower dose. I can feel kind of more robust in how I live. So that's a strategy. And then some people can come off. What I'm most interested in and excited about at this point in time is we have a new oral drug on the horizon called orforglipron, and it is the first version of an oral GLP-1 that's a non-peptide. And the side effect profile looks pretty good. And it's important that it's non-peptide because that means it's going to be pretty affordable to make in the lab.
Okay.
And it's not going to have all these high costs of refrigeration and needles and packaging. And I'm really curious what that drug and tool will do in, okay, we
Mm.
lose the significant weight on the weekly injectables. And
Right.
then what does it look like as we transition you potentially to a lifelong pill, but it's a daily pill and it's pretty cheap. And we don't have to be so stressed about your insurance covering it
Yeah.
or paying for it out of pocket. So I'm really
Right.
excited about that.
That's exciting to know that's coming. When it relates to, I always think of how smart the human brain is and figuring out that we're trying to trick it with stuff and then it adjusts. So, you lose weight in your 20s by sort of calorically restricting, then your body figures that out and you're not going to lose the weight later on in time, etc. Is there any information about, when we start to take these GLP-1 that our brain is like, oh yeah, no, I'm not gonna, I get what you're doing now, and it plateaus out and you need more. Is there anything about sort of the adjustments that our brain might make as we start to take these?
It's a great question. Science tells us that people at 5+ years out maintain their weight loss on these drugs at the dose that got them to the weight loss. So that's incredibly reassuring. That's also what I see in my clinic. But what happens with time is that our body ages. And so if I started you on these meds pre-menopause and then menopause hits, we might have it's not that the drug's not working anymore, but that you need a different treatment paradigm to deal with weight gain, because weight gain might come on in that period. Or just as we age, we lose muscle, right? And you didn't listen to me and you didn't prioritize getting to the gym, right? Or you had an injury and something happened and changed. And so sometimes we need to shift our treatment. So even if you did well on a smaller dose of the medication, we might need to increase. That doesn't mean the medication's not working. It's that the time has marched on and our needs are a little different. And sometimes I'll layer in other medications, or we'll switch classes of medications. And so also that's another reason for people who don't have all that much weight to lose to not always go to the flashiest, biggest, most effective tool right off the bat. Like, you'll probably respond to, well to the single GLP-1 agonist like Ozempic, Wegovy, and we don't maybe need to layer in 2 hormones. So I just feel like what I'm also excited about in the next 15 years of my career is, how do we know how to make the treatment personalized to you at your given needs at that moment? And then we kind of shift as time goes on and your needs change.
Interesting. Final question for you. If you could erase one myth or one misconception that women carry around as they age, what would it be?
That weight gain is a moral failing, that weight gain is willpower, that weight gain is your fault. There is a natural biology that moves us through life, and weight gain has been a part of that in our shifting hormones. So please do not think that this is solely, if you tried harder or if you wished it away, it would be different. I think on the flip of that is that thin does not give people happiness or beauty or power or intelligence. And I am in the business of helping people get healthier, but also that often looks like losing weight. But skinny isn't motivating. And making sure that we're doing this for health and longevity is really key, and keeping that top of mind, because our bodies on the outside don't make us who we are, and just make sure to keep taking care of what's on the inside too.
Such great words. I'm fascinated by what people are drawn to and their passions and areas that they go into professionally. And so feel so grateful that before GLP-1 was a hot thing, you were in this space getting expertise in obesity and weight, and that you're here to help us. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for your time today. And this will be so great for women to hear.